Hello and welcome to Daily Prelims Practice. Here we take up MCQs based on important articles from the Hindu and the Indian Express newspaper. Topics which we are going to cover today are displayed on your screen. Let's begin the discussion. Now let's start our session with our first question, which is based on this article, and this article appeared on page number 15 in the Indian Express. Context of this article is that recently Centre suspended the Foreign Contribution Regulation Act license of the Center for Policy Research, that is CPR. Now UPSC has been asking questions based on important aspects like transparency and accountability related to various groups and association like NGO, political parties. Like this question based on anti-defection law came in year 2022. So let's come to the practice question. Question says, with reference to the Foreign Contribution Regulation Act FCRA, consider the following statements. And in this question, you have to identify incorrect statements. The first is, it requires every person or NGO seeking to receive foreign donations to open a bank account in any of the scheduled banks in India. Now, broadly, there are three conditions that FCRA requires every person or NGO seeking to receive foreign donations. First is to register under the Act, that is Foreign Contribution Regulation Act. Second is to open a bank account for the receipt of the foreign funds in a State Bank of India, Delhi branch. So our first statement is incorrect as it talks about any of the scheduled banks. And the third condition is that to utilize those funds only for the purpose for which they have been received or as stipulated in the Act. Now let's come to the second statement. Under the new FCRA Rules 2022, political parties and media houses will be prosecuted if they fail to intimate the government within 90 days about foreign contributions by relatives. Now, under the new rules, political parties, legislature members, election candidates, judges, government servants, journalists, and media houses, among others, now all barred from receiving foreign contribution will no longer be prosecuted if they receive foreign contribution from relatives abroad and fail to intimate the government within 90 days. However, the recipient will be required to pay 5% of the foreign contribution received. So again, our second statement is incorrect. Third statement is, once granted, FCRA registration is valid for 10 years. Now again, this statement is incorrect because once granted, FCRA registration is valid for 5 years. So answer of this question is option D, that is 1, 2 and 3. Answer of this PYQ is option B. Now let's come to the next practice question. The inspiration of this question is that UPSC has been asking questions based on important regulation, framework, treaties, etc. Like this question based on General Data Protection Regulation came in year 2019. So let's come to the practice question. Question says, WINDSOR framework is related to which of the following? Now recently, United Kingdom government reached a landmark deal with the European Union on post-Brexit trade rules that will govern Northern Ireland. Now the WINDSOR framework will replace the Northern Ireland Protocol, which had proved to be among the thorniest of Brexit fallouts, creating problems both economical and political. The framework has two crucial aspects. First is the introduction of Green Lane and Red Lane for goods that will stay in Northern Ireland and those that will go to the EU, that is European Union, respectively. And the second is Storm on Brick, which allows Northern Ireland lawmakers and London to veto any European Union regulation that they believe affects the region adversely. The answer of this question is option D, that is WINDSOR framework, which is a landmark deal between European Union and UK on post-Brexit trade rules that will govern Northern Ireland. The answer of this PYQ is option C. The next question is based on this article. Recently, noted Carnatic vocalist and teacher Neela Ramgopal passed away in Bangalore. Now, as you know, that under Indian heritage and culture, Indian music and Indian dance is very important for your UPSC Prelims examination. As this question, based on Indian dance, that is Manipuri Sankirtana, came in year 2017. So let's come to the practice question, which is based on Indian classical music. In this question, you have to identify correct statements with respect to the differences between the Hindustani and Carnatic music. So the first statement is, time theory is important in Carnatic music but not in Hindustani music. Now this statement is incorrect. Why? Because in Hindustani music, the time of singing each raga is strictly observed and ragas are sung only according to their time. But in Carnatic music, there is no time theory and any raga can be sung at any time. So first statement is incorrect. Now let's come to the second statement. Equal division is made between vocal and music in the Hindustani form, while in Carnatic form, vocals are more preferred. This statement is correct. Why? Because Hindustani music is equally divided between vocal and music, while Carnatic music is more inclined towards vocals. But instrumental music is also practiced. Now let's come to the third statement. Improvisation is given more importance in the Hindustani music than the Carnatic music. This statement is also correct. Why? Because improvisation is given more importance in the Hindustani music and compositions are given more importance in Carnatic music. So correct answer of this question is option B, that is 2 and 3 only. Answer of this PYQ is option B. Now our next question is based on this article which appeared on page 12 in the Hindu newspaper. Context is that in the middle of a face-off with the Environment Ministry over the new Forest Conservation Rules 2022, potentially diluting the Forest Rights Act 2006, the National Commission for Scheduled Tribes has now secured FRA implementation reports of all states and union territories by invoking its constitutional powers to approach the Supreme Court directly. Now, UPSC has been asking questions based on various aspects related to forest conservation. Like this question based on Scheduled Tribes and Other Traditional Forest Dwellers Act 2006 came in year 2030. So let's come to the practice question. In this, you have to identify incorrect statements with respect to Forest Conservation Rules 2022. So the first statement is, the Forest Conservation Rules 2022 do not require the collector to obtain the consent of Gram Sabha before the in-principle approval of a project. Now, under FC Rules 2022, the collector do not require to obtain the consent of Gram Sabha before the in-principle approval of a project. So this statement is correct. Why? Because new rules state that state government may pass any order after the final approval from the central government for de-reservation or diversion or assignment of forest land on lease. Thus, it then left to the state government now to make sure that the claims of forest dwellers are settled. What does it mean? That neither Gram Sabha consent is required to be obtained before the grant of the in-principle approval of a project, nor is it necessary for the collector to oversee the process of recognition and vesting of individual claims of forest rights before the grant of in-principle approval. So first statement is correct. Now let's come to the second statement. The issue of Gram Sabha and FRA comes into play only after a final approval has been given by the central government. Now, FC Rules 2022 snatch away the participatory rights of the forest dwellers by making them simple bystanders to a process that affects their land and forest rights, their culture and livelihood. So the issue of Gram Sabha and FRA, according to new rules, come into play only after a final approval has been given by the central government. So our second statement is also correct. These aspects are also important for your mains examination. So revise it properly. So answer of this practice question is option D. That is neither 1 nor 2 as both the statements are correct. Answer of this PYQ is option D. Now our next question is based on this article and context of this article is that National Stock Exchange of India received the final approval from the SEBI, that is Securities and Exchange Board of India, to set up a social stock exchange, that is SSE. Now, as UPSC has been asking questions based on developments in the field of economy and various financial instruments associated with the mobilization of resources, as in 2022, it has asked a question based on inflation index bonds. So let's come to the practice question. In this question, you have to identify incorrect statements with reference to social stock exchange. Now, before finding whether these statements are right or wrong, first you should understand what is social stock exchange. It would serve as a medium for enterprises to seek finances for their social initiatives, acquire visibility, and provide increased transparency about funds mobilization and utilization. Now let's come to the first statement. Retail investors are allowed to invest in securities offered by for-profit social enterprises, that is FPSEs, as well as non-profit organization, that is NPO. Now, retail investors can invest only in securities offered by for-profit social enterprises, and in all other cases only institutional investors and non-institutional investors can invest in securities issued by social enterprises. So our first statement is incorrect. Now let's come to the second statement. All non-profit organizations and for-profit enterprises that include corporate foundations and religious organizations are eligible to be registered on the social stock exchange. Now any non-profit organization or for-profit social enterprises that establishes the primacy of social intent would be recognized as social enterprise, which make it eligible to be registered or listed on the SSC. However, for this purpose, SEBI has listed 17 plausible criteria and nature of services, and at least 67% of registered entities' activities must be directed towards attaining the stated objective. But corporate foundations, political and religious organizations or activities, professional or trade associations, infrastructure and housing companies, except affordable housing, would not be identified as social enterprise. So corporate foundations and religious organizations are not eligible. So our second statement is incorrect. Now let's come to the third statement. NPOs are barred from raising the money through donations from mutual funds. Now this statement is incorrect because NPO can raise money either through the issuance of zero coupon, zero principal instruments from private placement or public issue, or donations from mutual funds. So all the three statements are incorrect. So our correct answer is option D, 1, 2 and 3. Answer of this PYQ is option A. Now our last question is based on this article. An author of this article sheds light on the cultural significance of the Aurangabad, that is in Maharashtra, especially those related to architectural marvels located around the city of Aurangabad. Now, UPSC has been asking questions based on important historical monuments and features of Indian architecture, as in 2016, it has asked questions based on comparative analysis of two monumental locations, namely Ajanta and Mahabalipuram. So let's come to the practice question. First statement is, the entire excavation work of Ajanta caves was done during the reign of the Satvahana dynasty from about 2nd century BCE to the 1st century BCE. Now the caves at Ajanta are excavated out of a vertical cliff around the left bank of the river Vagora in the hills of Ajanta. They are 30 in numbers, of which 5 are Chaityagrahas and the rest are Viharas. Now the caves are connected with the river via rock-cut staircase. Now the excavation activity was carried out in two different phases separated by an interval of 4 centuries. The first phase coincides with the rule of Satvahana's dynasty from about 2nd century BCE to 1st century BCE, while the second phase corresponds to the Basam branch of the Vakataka dynasty in the 5th to 6th century. So with this, our first statement is incorrect. Now let's come to the second statement. The site of Ellora have presence of caves belonging to three prominent religions, that is Buddhism, Brahmanism and Jainism. Now the invaluable symbol of 34 caves at Ellora in the Charanandri hills of western India's Maharashtra showcases a spirit of coexistence and religious tolerance through the outstanding architectural activities carried out by the followers of three prominent religions, that is Buddhism, Brahmanism and Jainism. The rock-cut activity was carried out in three phases from 6th to 12th century. The earliest caves, that is 1 to 12, excavated between the 5th to 8th centuries, reflect the Mahayana philosophy of Buddhism then prevalent in this region. The Brahmanical group of caves, that is 13 to 29, including the renowned Kailasha temple, that is cave number 16, was excavated between 7th to 10th century, and the last phase between the 9th and 12th centuries saw the excavation of a group of caves 30 to 34, reflecting Jaina philosophy. So with this, our second statement is correct. So our correct answer is option B, that is 2 only. Answer of this PYQ is option B.